Have you had an encounter you'd like to hear narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details. You can email me at contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Buckeye Bigfoot. Now, tonight's story is not so dissimilar than many we get. It is a little bit of a walk down memory lane. And what I like about it is it's actually near an area I knew growing up, and that is Corbin, Kentucky. Whereas I knew North Corbin, this is far west of Corbin, but he talks about it quite a bit. So grab your snackage and go ahead and get your booty on up in the saddle. I think it's time we head on down to the Cumberland Gap. Let's go. My story goes back to the 1960s when I was about 8 or 9 years old. In the 1960s, we lived way west out of Corbin, Kentucky, near Laurel Lake. We had a small farm on 52 acres. We kept all kinds of animals. The beef cattle we kept to about 10 to 15 head at a time. Sometimes we kept some pigs. But we always had chickens, not to mention dogs and cats that came and went. Now those cattle, they were our money in the bank. My daddy had worked in the roundhouse for the L&N Railroad in Corbin, but he was laid off in the mid-60s when passenger trains slowed up. So the beef and the pork and the chicken and the eggs, all those things that we sold, well, that paid the taxes and bought the electric, as my daddy would say. So all of those animals were very important to us. We had no air conditioning, so the windows were open in the summer. One night we woke up hearing the cows bellowing and screaming and running, which right there we knew something was bad wrong. We had put the cows up in the barn the night before, yet we could hear them stampeding right up to the fence closest to the house, right by the chicken coop. I heard my parents' bedroom door yank open. Then my dad's boots thundering down the hall. He opened the door and was out like a jackrabbit. I just saw the flash of a flashlight as he flicked it on before he closed the door behind him. And while I didn't see it, I knew well enough he had his shotgun with him. I was at my door, and there was my mom coming down the hall wrapped in a housecoat. She stopped and got another flashlight from the closet. Then she told me to stay in my room. I noticed that the right side of her robe was dragging down lower than the left, so I knew she had a pistol in that pocket. I often saw that in her work aprons, because she always kept a pistol on her when we went out in the fields. I saw that, and then, boom, she was right out the door right after my daddy. You know, to this day, I still don't know what took place out there, even though I did speak to my parents about it when I was older. They never would tell me. All I know is something had broken the barn doors. In the morning, my daddy had a man that he knew come with a bucket loader and a truck. I watched from the porch as the bucket loader came bouncing across the field with a dead cow in it. They told me that the cow had died of bloat. But when I saw, as it got dumped into the truck, well, I didn't believe it. I guess you could say it really was a cow I saw, but just barely. I asked several times, and then I learned not to ask anymore. I got no answers, or I got answers that I knew were not true. If I asked again or explained how or why I knew they were telling me an untruth, well, I got in big trouble. So I stopped asking. I guess after a long while I stopped even thinking about it. Then came a morning that my dad left early out the front to go help someone with some odd jobs where he could make some extra money. That left me and Mama to do the chores and some gardening, which we normally did anyway. Like I said, my Mama always carried a pistol with her. You just never knew back then what might stop by to say hello to you. Might be a bear. Might be just a harmless person looking for some food because they were hungry. And it might be someone who knew the man of the house was away for the day and he might not be so harmless. So we walk out the back door, and it was like a scene from a bad movie. We were halfway to the chickens, and we could see the blood and the feathers everywhere. Chickens were dead all over the coop and outside the coop. Not a single chicken was left alive. Mama pushed me right back into the house. We didn't have a phone in those days, and Daddy had taken the only car we had, but I knew where he was working at. Mama gave me a .22 pistol, and she sent me off on my bike to go get him, with instructions not to stop for anything and to pedal like the hounds of hell were behind me. And given what I had just seen, I didn't need to be told twice. Of course, my daddy came home right away. There was a bad predator on the property that he needed to hunt down. We didn't know what in the world it could have been. The gate to the coop was closed and latched. The last people there were Mama and Daddy. They were out there the night before, and they were both sure they had closed and latched the coop tight. My daddy again made a round every night, one last time after he put the cows in the barn. He would go out, he would check the barn doors, then he would check the pig pen to make sure that was latched, and he always checked the coop door. It was almost an obsessive-compulsive disorder that my father had. Even when he knew everything was latched, he had to go around one last time to check it all. So to find the chickens dead and the door latched and closed, that was something of a shock. So what had opened the door and then closed it back when it was done eating half of every chicken? And that's what it did. It looked like it had smashed the chickens' heads, then picked them up and chewed the front right off of them like it was eating a corn cob. It ate just the front of the chicken, not the back. It didn't eat the head or the legs, just the breast. Now, the reason we didn't hear anything was because it was late September by that point, and we had night temperatures very low, so we had closed up the house that night. Though I still wonder how we didn't hear those chickens. The coop was not too far from the house. Again, being a kid, they didn't tell me everything I know. But even though I was a kid, I knew something bad was going on, and it felt even worse to me because they didn't tell me. So I was imagining very, very scary things. In early October, we had a true Indian summer for about a week. It was warm enough that the house got very warm, but surprisingly, I was told I had to keep my windows shut at night. Now, I didn't like that one bit. So as soon as the lights were out, I spent probably 10 or 15 minutes very slowly inching my window up, maybe 1/8 of an inch at a time. I was trying to be perfectly silent. With the moonlight out and all the fresh air, I quickly fell asleep. I woke up later and had to use the bathroom. As I was walking back from the bathroom, I stopped in the hallway. Directly across from the doorway was a window, and under that window was my bed. I don't think it was quite a full moon, but it was very light outside, enough to see the difference in the lights and the darks. When I came up to my door from the hallway, I saw something cross the window, and it darkened the shadow on the floor. That caught my attention. I was scared, so I just stood there. If I hadn't just been to the bathroom, I probably would have went right there in my pajamas on the floor. Now, in my young mind, the worst thing that could be out there was some kind of a bad human. And in my mind, that's what had been causing all the problems with our animals. I had nothing else to make sense out of it with but a bad human. And there was something human-shaped outside my window. I was sure of that. But at the same time, I knew that couldn't be right. Our house only had one floor, but like a lot of the old houses in Kentucky at the time, it was set up off the ground a few feet on stilts. So I knew that my window was high up off the ground, higher than a human. But there I was, seeing what I thought was a head. The shadow outside my window was there for a moment, then suddenly it was gone, and I could actually hear it walking away. I heard the ground crunching under its feet. I think I dove over to my bed and pulled the window down, almost slamming it, not caring if my parents heard. I curled up tightly against the head of the bed, which was not under the window. I think it was a very long time before I went to sleep. We were now at the time of selling out the cattle and the pigs that we weren't going to overwinter, and the loss of that one cow that summer, well, that bit us a little bit hard. Some people keep their money in bank accounts. Farmers back then had their money walking around on hooves. To lose a cow for us would be like you losing an entire zero off your bank balance. It really hurt. We were also hurting for the loss of the chickens. Those eggs made us money, and when they weren't making us money, they filled up our bellies with a lot of protein. Soon as we sold off the beef and the pork, we bought more chickens, and Daddy upgraded their coop. We had a frost around Thanksgiving that year, and we found what looked like big footprints near the barn that morning on our chore round. Daddy was home that day, and he was the first to see them. At first he didn't say anything, but I pointed them out. He didn't know what to make of them, and again I learned, don't ask too many questions, but I could see he was agitated. Then the first week of December it warmed up again. We turned the cows out to go get some sun. About 4 p.m., me and my dad went to go call them in before it got dark. We counted, and we were missing a cow. So of course we started walking and calling and looking. We found it toward the north end of the pasture. Its eyes were still open, in a terrified, awful expression. Its mouth was open too. Its tongue was missing. The neck had been twisted at a grotesque angle. I assume it had been broken. I won't give more description, though I could. I will only say that it looked as if the cow's insides had all been pulled to the outside. There was blood everywhere. From that point we could trace back where the attack seemed to start. It was right at the fence line, about 50 feet from where we found the cow. People were talking about it. People said it was a wild cougar or one of the valley panthers. Some said it was a wild pack of dogs, although I never once heard any braying of dogs that I didn't know. People were talking all kinds of things about it, but no one seemed to know anything for sure. But whatever it was, it kept coming back. I knew my parents were on edge. Again, the loss of a cow was really going to hurt us, even more so that year because she was supposed to calve in the spring. So we didn't just lose one cow, but potentially 2. Sometime closer to spring, I want to remember it as being March or thereabouts. My daddy found a job hauling timber, so he was gone one day. I was in school, and my mama was there alone. When I came home from school, I knew something was wrong. Something had happened, but I didn't know what, and Mama didn't take any questions. When Daddy got home, they went to their bedroom, closed the door, and talked. Now that is not something they did. I was told to wait in the kitchen, so I did. When they came out, I got grilled about had I seen anything recently. Had I heard anything? Like a monkey. Did I see a monkey or a gorilla? Well, I'd only seen a monkey one time, and that was when a carnival had come through. I hadn't seen anything at all like that. I'd seen gorillas in books only, but not in real life back then. Maybe there was a zoo in big cities like Lexington, but there wasn't one in Corbin. I decided then that I had better tell them about the night that I thought someone was at my window. I can't say why exactly that I thought of it, since they were asking about something else entirely, but it was all I had to tell them, so tell them I did. The look on their faces was what I'd call thunderstruck. I got asked again and again to tell them exactly what happened and what I saw. All I got told that day was that Mama got chased by something that afternoon all the way to the house, and it might have been a monkey or a gorilla. Now, I knew monkeys were a lot smaller than gorillas, even though I'd never seen one, but I had read about them. I had seen diagrams, I'm sure, and comparisons, but I knew not to tell my parents how I knew they were wrong or outright lying. I had already been through that. Later that night, we were cleaning up from dinner, and we heard an awful screech from one of our barn cats, but it sounded very close to the house. The cats often came to the porch for some extra love, and often Mama would put out extra scraps after dinner. What we heard didn't sound like fighting or mating. It sounded like a screech of horrific pain. Actually, it was cut off mid-screech, which was even scarier. Not long after that, there was a huge thump against the back door. All of us jumped. Dad got up to check it out. Mama and I were following him. But as soon as the door was opened, he stopped and he told Mama to take me into the living room. I kept craning my neck to look around them. Dad stepped out, and he tried to close the door quickly behind him, but not quick enough before I saw it. The cat had been one of my favorites. With my infinitely clever 8-year-old mind, I had named him the brilliant name of Tiger. Well, he was, after all, an orange-striped cat, like a tiger. But my last sight of him was of his bloody body without a head. I also saw the blood splat where he had hit the door. Listening later, I heard my dad tell Mama that it looked like his head had been ripped off, or maybe even bitten off. I cried hard and bitter tears for Tiger. There was one more time this horrible creature made an appearance, and that time we all saw it together. We were coming home from church, and we had pulled up the driveway. After the first chicken coop raid, as I said, Dad had fortified the coop and bought a new, stronger latch. But apparently it didn't matter. We pulled around to the back gravel parking, and there it was, big as you please. It had a hold of a bloody chicken, and it was eating it, just the way we eat KFC. It saw us, grabbed one more already dead chicken from the ground, held them both by their feet in one hand. Then it walked out of the coop and slowly closed the coop door and latched it. All the while it was looking right at us, like it was saying, "Yeah, I can do this. What are you going to do about it? I know how to work this." My dad flew mad. He laid on the horn. I was busy getting an eyeful of this horrible beast. It was big, black, wide, taller than any person I'd ever known. It was a hideous thing to me. I knew it had killed my wonderful Tiger. It had also killed the cows. And when I thought about this must have been what chased my Mama, I was mad more than scared. I wanted this hairy thing dead. I guess Daddy was thinking the same thing. He was laying on the horn, and then suddenly he stomped on the gas. He was driving straight toward it. Now, the chicken coop itself was fenced in, but it was set apart from the fenced-in garden or the fenced-in pasture, but it was close to the house. That was a 1959 Chevy Nomad station wagon, and while it wasn't made for four-wheel drive, it made up for it with force of gained momentum, and it kept moving. It was solid steel and chrome, and unlike cars today, if that old wagon had hit that Bigfoot, I'm pretty sure it would have creamed it. When Dad took off, I just knew we were going to hit it. There's no way it could outrun us, even on a bumpy field. Well, I was wrong. We almost clipped it at one point, but it jinked to the left faster than Dad could cut the wheel. And cutting the wheel in that Nomad took some effort. Back then, there was no power steering. The ground we were on was very bumpy, and it slowed us down. I had been standing in the floorboard of the back seat when all this started, and I think I cracked my head on the top of that car a few times when we started after it. I remember seeing my mom bracing herself with one hand on the dash and another hand straight up, holding on to the roof of the car. No one wore seat belts back then. I don't even know if that old Nomad had them. Well, long story short, that evil Bigfoot outran us. It hit the pasture fence and went right over it like it was a pole vaulter in the Olympics. Dad got out, mad as a hornet. He was shaking his fist, and I heard words come out of him that I'd never heard before, from anyone. We were all pretty quite shook up. Dad went out with a shotgun right after we got home, and he went looking for it, but he never did find it. After that, it was pretty rough times. Mom and Dad decided the animals were why it kept coming back, so all of the animals we had were sold. Dad was now hauling timber, and it was a very dangerous job, and it didn't pay like the railroad had, but we managed to scrape by. There were some more incidents, but they seem pointless to tell you about, because I can't swear it was the Bigfoot. I don't know why it killed Tiger. My mom thinks that Tiger bit it or scratched it. Maybe it picked Tiger up. Maybe it had seen me petting Tiger. Tiger really was my favorite, mostly because all the other cats in the barn wouldn't let me touch them. They weren't quite feral, but they weren't pets either. But me, I'd been petting little Tiger since he was a tiny kitten. So to see him that way really hurt. At least Dad let me help bury him. Even though he was in a shoebox and I wasn't supposed to see him, I peeked. And boy, did I cry. I know a lot of people want to have a meeting with Bigfoot. They want to think that they're really nice, and maybe some are. But the one we had was not nice. When I got older, I went to the University of Kentucky on the agriculture program. I told a few people my story. But this was long after the events, and by then I knew what we had been dealing with. All those years ago when I was a child, I had no name for it. But the people I told, mostly, they didn't believe, so I stopped talking about it. And for many, many, many years, I stopped ever thinking about it. I now own my own farm in Tennessee. I have for many, many years. I've had barn cats too, many, many of those. I even gave them their own little shed so it's heated for the winters. And yes, I've had many, many orange cats over the years, all of them named Tiger. I think I'm on Sir Tiger the 9th now, but none compare to that first one. And if a Bigfoot should show up at my farm, and if it bothers me, my horses, my cats, anything, I'm going scorched earth on him. Signed, Robert Y. Thank you, Robert, for that wonderful email. You know, I spent some time on my grandparents' farm down there in North Corbin, so I'm kind of familiar with the area you're talking about. I never heard of a Bigfoot down there when I was growing up, so I'm surprised when I see these reports and get them and have read them on other websites, so thank you for sending that in. All right, my folks. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this tonight. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Now, I think that's all I have for you tonight. So until we meet up again, please always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.